All right, so let's get started. How many of you are actively using AI? It's almost everybody. The reason I asked is because I was talking to the guy who did the poll, and one of the comments back was that people felt like they weren't getting enough direction in AI. And I don't have any problems talking about it. I mean, I try to hold back because I could talk about it a lot more than I do. That's why I was sort of asking. I mean, there's a balancing point here in trying to help people deal with it and not making people feel like they have to actually use it. The risk with AI, the risk with using AI is, and I see it getting worse actually, is that artificial intelligence is being posited as an oracle. In other words, it's a box you go to and you ask questions and it gives you answers and you just assume that they are true. Let me see if I can actually do this experiment here. That could be interesting. Of course, spinning up, come on. There it goes. Let's see if I have it. Nope, I don't. Let's see. So I'd actually have to do real work here. I'm going to have an experiment that I run on my machine at home where I have LM Studio installed. Anybody used LM Studio? So LM Studio is one of the tools that you can use to run language models, large language models, locally. Now, the language models that you run locally are not really large. They're more like medium and small. Often they are mid-range models that have been what is called quantized, which is essentially a way of getting them to fit in memory. So the challenge with the models is they're very memory consumptive. So I know a number of people here have Macs. So one of the things that is a strength of the Mac right now is it actually allows you to use the entire memory of the computer. It's what's called a unified memory architecture, which means the GPU and the CPU share equal access to the memory itself, which makes it like you have a GPU with as much memory as you have on your computer. Now, if you have a Mac Studio, you can have 512 gigabytes, and that's larger than any of the video cards you can actually buy standalone. A typical video card standalone for gaming, for example, will have anywhere from 12 to 24 gigabytes of memory, maybe 32. When you buy a GPU for AI, because you've got $30,000 to spend or $25,000 to spend, they come with 96 gigabytes of memory usually. I think that's the number for the H100, which is ironic because you can actually go buy a custom machine now for $4,000 US that has 96 gigabytes on it and probably not as powerful a GPU. But the memory is usually the constraint, not the GPU itself. So, at any rate, long story, but it gave me cover while the thing failed to uninstall old applications. Please try running the installer again. Great. Well, that wasn't very useful. So one of the experiments that I did last fall was to take a large language model, actually I took 290 of them, and ask it a question about a paper that didn't exist. But it sounded very plausible. It was actually a pretty cool little piece of work, and what was amazing about it was I literally presented it to 290 different models, and them rather, and 92% of them fabricated responses. And that made me ask the question, why? When someone asks you a question, do you just give them the truth? Have you ever lied to anybody? Of course. Why do you lie to people? Ever taken an exam where you didn't know the answer to a question and you guessed? Didn't have anything to lose by guessing. Have you ever had somebody, you asked a question and they give you this answer and later you find out it was complete BS? Right. Why do they do that? Because there is a social requirement, a social expectation that someone who sounds knowledgeable must be right. But the reality is we all know that sometimes people will give you answers and they're just not right. Well, what did we train LLMs on? What did we train AI on? We trained them on the body of human knowledge. We scraped everything we could, we threw it into this bucket, and out came something that tells truth when it's a property of the data. And when the truth isn't what emerges, it tells something that is highly coherent. That's literally what they are optimized to do. Not to tell you truth. The optimization function isn't pick the next truthful word or the next word that leads to a truthful statement. It's pick the next word that's most likely. And that means coherent. The reason that you have to be very careful in working with large language models and working with any AI is that I'm caught in update hell where it doesn't want to quite update. And so I'm not going to be able to run that demo. I hadn't planned on it. So demos you plan don't run well. Demos you didn't plan almost never pan out. And so part of the reason that I asked you to do the AI logs is because one of the things you will find if you actually engage with AI critically is that it can actually be really amazing at the stuff that it does generate, but you can't trust it. And to make it worse, the models themselves have been trained to give you happy vibes. Literally, what happens in the training paradigm is that they take the base model, for example, and they give it a question and they get back an answer. And then they take that question and answer and they put it in a bundle with a whole bunch of others of questions and answers, and then they take that and they ship it off to gig workers in low-wage economies. Often they're paid like a penny a piece to give a thumbs up or thumbs down. And they take that data and they feed it into the large language model and they use that to shape the answer that it returns to you. So what you get is something that was guided by people who wanted to feel better about themselves. I don't know about you, but when I'm talking to an encyclopedia, I don't want it to tell me I'm a great person. So what we have isn't an encyclopedia. Ah, there we go. It worked that time. Let's see if I can actually do this. This is the fun part. Let's see. I think it's... Is that right? Control-Shift-P? I don't remember. Yeah. There. Oh. No, that's the one I want. Yeah, there we go. All right. This is the problem. If you don't touch these things all the time, they come and torture you. These are much shorter, at least. So what I'm going to do... Come on. There we go. I'm going to go look for a model. And this is literally how you can actually run... I think 32B think is way too big. Yeah. Where's Olmo 3.7? W25T2 instruct. So an instruct model is the one that's been fully trained and modified. The think model is one that's been fully trained and modified and generates thinking tokens. And they are distinct from the actual text. Thinking tokens became useful for a while. There's an Olmo 7BO220. Oh, that's the old one. Let's see. The one I used was Olmo 3. And I know it's here. Oh, there's a 3.1 now. 3, 11, 25, 7, 7B. Like I said, this is the dangerous part. Let's go try and download a model that I don't have. 3B base. A base model, which is what actually starts. I'll start with this because it's so small that it won't take very long to download, and I'll actually show you what you get when you have an LLM that has literally been trained on the corpus of data but not been conditioned. It hasn't been given any of the instruction training that makes it into a chat-bottable interface. This is actually very interesting to look at if you're interested in how these work. My point was that I wanted to show you that when you ask this thing a question, it's just based on the language you ask. What you get back is something that kind of looks Babelish. It's not completely. If the pattern here is the same as what I've seen in the past, what you'll get back, what I'll get back, is 30%. It's UBC Wi-Fi, what can I say? At home, this would already be downloaded. What you'll get back is, in fact, an answer, but then you'll usually get your question back, and then it will give you suggestions for things that might be continuations beyond the question, and then maybe it'll repeat the question again, and then it will stop. So what you get isn't completely coherent. And the point here is the transformer itself is just a completion engine. And the stuff they do afterwards to get the transformer to turn into the suave, sophisticated chatbot that you talk to is to put these other things on it. Since I'm impatient, I will just pop up with Claude, because Claude is here. Come on, Claude. Wake up. Lazy thing. How many use Claude? Are you using Claude Code?
Yeah, I use Claude Code.
You're just using Claude the chat thingy? Yeah.
It runs out too quick.
It runs out too quick?
Like the tokens you have for like 4 hours and like, yeah.
Are you using the free account?
No, I got the paid version.
You have the $20?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the codex now, like I haven't even run out of tokens for that, so I just like that now.
Interesting. I don't run out of tokens on Claude, but I pay the $200 a month, so I use it a lot.
You can get Cursor, it's free for students.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah, for a year.
Oh, really?
You can also use GitHub. Copilot is, or yeah, whatever it is that GitHub has, is free for students as well. So at any rate. So Claude doesn't want to start. Come on, Claude. What is going on here? Everything's being bulky today. I can always go here. Let's pull up a web browser. There we go. And I will use, is it Kimmy.moonshot or Kimmy.com? It's like, what is the fastest way to do this? Because I was going to, there's Kimmy. You can actually use Kimmy with code editors. Let me open folder. Of course, that would be the one that I don't have here. Great. And you know what I could do? Connect to tunnel to host, connect to host. Okay. Now I'm getting tricky because I'm just connecting to the machine at home. Open folder. I wanted to do reviews, and so I thought I would try to pick an example of wow, this is really slow. I think doing anything over UBC Wi-Fi is just dangerous, isn't it? Yeah, it's still running. Trying to connect to that. Let's go to GitHub then. Alright, GitHub. I don't want TLA+. Thank you for useless completion. This is always the problem when you do live demos of anything. So, how are the projects going? Capstones. Was Tuesday useful for anybody? Good. Well, I see a couple of heads, which I'm going to just assume that means that somebody liked it at least. It was a very strange kind of thing because Rachel Plottinger was in here doing peer review, so she picked a strange class to do that on because it wasn't one that I spent a lot of time talking about. The video for next week is already posted. I'm trying to get better about getting them out more than a few days in advance. We'll see if it actually makes any difference, but my guess is that people probably won't watch it anyway. I can't get anything on the network. This is terrible. All right. Well, I was trying to show something deep and meaningful, and that is not happening. You should never do this. And everyone does it. Anybody using Cloud Code? How many of you use dangerously skip permissions because you get annoyed giving it permission for every single thing? You're like, just do it. I'll put you in a sandbox. Destroy it. I don't care. Yes. There we go. There's Claude. Oh, I got 3 guest passes. Now I have something I could give away. It doesn't even cost me anything. All right, so it's shorter than I usually type, believe it or not. And it will be slow because, of course, it's UBC Wi-Fi. So this isn't running locally. This is just on the running through the cloud. Come on. I'm going to turn off LM Studio. Something's making it slow. I'm guessing it's the... I wanted to show them... So this is actually a trick that I use. If I have a foreign code base and I've never looked at it before, I literally just simply tell Claude to spin up what I call scours. It's going to be an agent that is told to just go look and tell me what you find that's interesting. No directions, because the moment you give it a target to look for, it's only going to look for that. It's going to filter everything else out. It's the difference between trying to get from point A to point B and saying, I'm going to go on a stroll. Because when you go on a stroll, you're looking around, you see things, you're going to have a different experience. And there you go. He's running 4 agents. Unleash a squad of explorers to scour the code base. He's going to run 4 agents. And he's going to look for things, and he's going to come back, and he's going to take what they find. Now, sometimes they do this iteratively. A number of people here have already said they're using Claude. Claude Code actually uses internally what's called a system prompt. So if you look at the API, the way the API works, and they'll run against the API. All these LLMs are pretty much the same in terms of the way they interact with the world. You give it what's called a system prompt. These are the instructions. And then you give it a user prompt. Here's what the user wants. The system prompt is about 7,500 tokens. And it's about 2 tokens per word, roughly. So that means that it's about a 3,200 word list of instructions. Can you imagine if somebody handed you 3,000 words of instruction, that's multiple pages, of do this, don't do that, do this when this is happening, whatnot, right? So my question was, I went back and I said, well, okay, are these even coherent instructions? And guess what? They're not. They contain internal contradictions. And so I said, well, that's really interesting. And so we started really looking at it. The first thing we did was we looked for specific things like contradictions. We tried to find things structural. And then this morning, before I came in to teach 416 and then come over here and teach, this morning I said, what happens if we just send some agents in there to look and see what they can see? Don't tell them what to look for, just say, what do you see? And guess what? Oh my gosh. It was like a gold mine. It was a completely different set of insights, into what was there that I never even thought of. And I did it 3 times. I gave 1 to Claude, I gave 1 to Codex, which is ChatGPT, and I gave 1 to Kimi. And all 3 of them came back with completely different observations. And that in and of itself was telling, because that means that each of them is using a different lens. A lot of times you'll ask the question, you'll get the same answer. What is the capital of France? It's a factual question, it's very easy to answer, they will answer. When you ask them, what database should I use? They're going to tell you to use, Supabase, or they're going to tell you to use Postgres. Because those are the most common answers. So here you go. In, 2.5 minutes, it sent 4 agents across this code base and came back with insights about it. You don't have to know anything about it. How many of you have ever actually done this? So when I've asked you to do a code review, or to review somebody else's repo, you can do this. You could literally say, clone it, run these things, and they're going to come back with this list of insights you probably wouldn't be able to generate if you spent an hour or 2 looking through the code. Because I don't know about you, but when I start looking at code, it's really easy to get lost really fast. I mean, half the time I get lost looking through my own code, let alone somebody else's code. This is the way I use generative AI. This is the way that I interact with these. I don't use them to give me answers to things that I can think of and do myself. I use them to try and find information that then informs me. And usually what I then do is I start asking some questions. This is what parallel exploration looks like in practice. 4 agents, same code base, different angles, complementary discoveries. Any questions from the class? See, Claude knows you're here. It sees you. Any questions? Ask a question.
You should ask it in Chinese.
Well, that would assume that I actually had the Chinese IME installed and could do that. But Claude would answer in Chinese.
But I heard it's actually like DeepSeek under the hood. Like you could ask it like, hey, like what model are you in Chinese? It'll say DeepSeek. But I think it's for Sonnet.
Yes, well, what he's indirectly making a dig at, I suspect, is that yesterday Anthropic and OpenAI and Google were all accusing DeepSeek, Kimi, and Minimax of using their models to train the other one's LLMs, which I actually think is a terrible idea, but not because I give a shit about somebody stealing stuff from Anthropic. I'm not very interested in worrying about Anthropic and people stealing from them. I'm not interested in OpenAI or even Google. Do you know why? Where did those companies get their training data?
They stole it too.
They acquired it from the internet. They downloaded pirated books. They scraped everything. This isn't a secret. Everyone knows it. I actually need to fill out the claim form for 2 of the books that I authored that are in the data set that they downloaded and used to train. I'd feel a lot better, honestly, if the AI companies had said, you know, we've taken all of this knowledge from the world, we're going to give it back free. That would have been a completely different thing. Then I feel like, okay, maybe they have a leg to stand on. You can't really see that. I'm going to have to pull that shade there, otherwise. That's like that. But they didn't. Okay, so that's fine. I'm not going to argue about the rights or wrongs of it. I am going to point out to people that if you use LLMs to generate code right now in the US and Canada, they have no right for copyright, so you don't have a copyright. And one of those interesting things I haven't seen the AlphaFold people deal with yet is the fact that when you invent a protein that gets used to create a drug that will save people's lives, and you try to file for a patent, the only way you can get that in the United States is if you lie and say that it was a human who invented it, even though you're in the press telling people that it was an AI that did it. Because AI can't have patents. It can't have copyrights. The copyright thing is actually existing case law. There was a macaw who got a photographer's camera about a decade ago, and he took pictures of them. The pictures are amazing. He took these pictures, he took these selfies. Literally, it's so funny. And they spent like 5 or 7 years or something fighting over... Claude's funny. 5 or 7 years over which they fought about who owned the pictures. And ultimately, the court decided that no one owned them because the pictures were actually taken by the primate itself, and the primate doesn't have the legal right to own copyrights, so no one owns it. So they're actually there's no copyright. Public domain, that's the word that I was looking for. The code base has no recorded opinions on the intellectual quality of Tony's questions. What it does show is that TAs are instructed to DM Tony or post in TA internal with any questions. Tony's the one answering questions, not asking them. The real answer isn't in the code. Want me to search the Discord logs? I can't, but it seemed like the right threat to make. Okay, so Claude is being funny today. Do you get Claude? Does your Claude make jokes like that? Mine does. My point, I mean, this is literally just the class repo. So it gave me detailed reports of what it found, 2 spec kit modules demonstrating specification-driven development, living curriculum, contracts, blah, 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 documentation explorer, course philosophy, blah, 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 modular dependencies. Boy, okay, it's pretty boring. kind of a boring code base. See, I wanted to actually do it on the other one because the other one is much more interesting, but I couldn't get it to connect. Did it ever connect? Let's see. Yes, I trust the authors there. Oh, seriously. All right. See, the arbiter one is the one that I wanted to do because this is the one where we actually took all of the system prompts that we could find. We found 3 different families of them, and we took them and we said, are these coherent? And it turns out they're not. And then I was telling you about how this morning I literally sent scouts out, and they found like 47 things that were wrong with them. I'm like, wow, this is pretty crazy. This is why LLMs can be very powerful. They can create the kind of force multiplier that allows you to be incredibly productive because you can sit there and spend your day pushing back on the thing because it just simply wants to come to closure because that's what it's been taught to do. And you're going, no. I'm going to ask another stupid question. And you ask the next stupid question. All right, dude. Open folder. Wow, it's really bad. Arbiter, there, that's the one I wanted. Probably can't even read that, right? It's too small. Come on. Wow, this is so slow. All right, that's not working. Anybody have a repo with stuff in it that I could actually clone and show? Because I was thinking that that's what originally I was going to do. I was just going to pull somebody's repo. I don't know whose repo it is. And if you don't have a repo that you're willing to let me look at, which is fine, I have no problems with that, I will just pull one of my own. But mine are pretty boring. Anybody?
Yeah, sure, you can do that.
All right, so to do yours, then I'm going to quit out of here. Okay, let's see here. Get clone. Wow, this is pretty bad. Get student cs ubc.c. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Put the ubc in there. That's the best part. You'd think that the web browser would be smart enough to not cache 404 pages, but it's not. Oh, goody. Even better. We get to go into login hell. I feel like I spend my whole life logging into things. Come on. There you go. All right, so 436. Let's just do that one because it's not going to make it easy for me to get there. And give me a repo name.
Taha, T-A-H-A.
T-A-H-A. There we go. Super secret. Let me copy this, grab it, go down. Yep, that's what I want, right there. Come on. Oh, probably help if I push the right button. I'm gonna be lazy. And do the same thing. It's gonna take a while since it's, yep, stay there. Oh, I've never used this one, so. Same exact problem. Yep, and it cleared the screen, so I can't scroll backwards. So I'm going to do something similar.
What is your greatest flawed gimmick?
Greatest Claude gimmick
Yeah.
in terms of what?
I think general use, like if it's hallucinating, what do you usually do to fall back on?
I just call it on as bullshit.
In the same context?
Yeah, why not?
Well,
I mean, I don't usually get Claude to do that, but I spend a lot of time actively working to keep it out of that space where it starts fabricating things. So, for example, one of its common patterns is it will ask you unary questions. Would you like me to? And there's only one option there, and you're like, I literally will say, is this just performative theater? And it's part of the training, and I know that. But by making it visible in the conversation, it's like, imagine somebody points out to you that you have a bad habit. Like you look at me and you go, you talk too much. You're absolutely right. And I'll keep talking, but now I'm aware of it. Now I'm thinking about it, and I'm saying, holy shit, okay. Well, and I've watched it. It really does work with them. It's quite surprising. So it sent out 4 agents again this time. You can see it's using tools, it's using tokens. I mean, it's chewing through tokens like crazy. It's great. Anytime you start spinning up parallelism, you can definitely see it. I'm using Opus 4.6, which is, you can probably get away with using Sonnet 4.6. It's cheaper, but very close to being similar in capabilities. And they were released a week apart, so of course it's no surprise that Sonnet 4.6 released a week later, a cheaper model, would in fact have the same skill ability, because about every 2 months they replace these models. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane how fast these are moving and how fast they are changing. And one of the reasons I kind of de-emphasize it this term is because they're changing so fast, it's hard to actually have any materials other than doing what I'm doing here right now, which is doing a soft shoe number while it goes and does something. So I was telling you that basically this morning I actually took and ran this whole scouring thing over at the Arbiter, and it was really cool. It was really interesting to see how complicated it is for these companies that put these prompts together. And the way they actually put the prompts together, it's clear, is they assemble them in pieces. So like your team writes something and goes into the file, and your team writes something and goes into the file. And this is the reason you end up with conflicts, because there's no global review of this. And because it's all free-form text. And it's like I said, it's like 3,000 plus words of text. But this is also the rule book by which it plays. And so we've been starting to look at, what happens when you change the order? What happens if you change the punctuation? How many of you actually think that the meaning of a sentence changes when you change the punctuation, aside from eats, shoots, and leaves? A reference you probably don't get, but it's to a book, which is literally about, you can think of it as a joke, right? What is it? An elephant walks into a bar, orders a drink, shoots the bartender and walks out. And that's because somebody put eats, commas, shoots, commas, leaves. So he ate, he shot the, like I said, it's kind of a dumb joke. It's actually a book, though, about the importance of punctuation. Well, it turns out with LLMs, the importance of punctuation is really high. This morning I'm reading an article. Oh, there you go. You got, Claude liked it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you like it? All right, so let's see. What do the agents come back and say? All 4 agents reported back. Here's the summary. Repository structure. Found a well-organized CPSC 436C write repo for Maple Votes Capstone. Noted 5.5 megabytes of mini cloud projects and evidence receipts, including a full-stack weather dashboard and lecture to study engine. Impressed by the evidence-first approach and ethics ledger. So this is a good one, right? This is an easy kind of code review to do. You're looking at that and you're going, this is absolutely awesome. Dug into all source code across Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, infrastructure configs, highlights good, clean, fast API backend, critical, race conditions in local storage, DynamoDB, scan missing pagination, Lambda rate limiter that doesn't actually work across the invocations, fragile LLM JSON parsing. Now, there you go. This is the point, is it's giving you some stuff. I wouldn't necessarily just paste that. Well, I wouldn't paste that in. What I would do is I would say, now I know where to go look. Now you know where to go confirm. But because the prompt itself that found that, I have a high probability of finding something that's real. What do you think? Is it right?
Yeah, that is an issue.
Okay, great. So if you ask a question that gives it an opinion about what will make you happy. I'm thinking of going on vacation to Hawaii. What do you think, ChatGPT? Oh, Hawaii's a great choice. Absolutely wonderful. Here, let me arrange things and figure out, and you'll get all sorts of recommendations about that. When I ask Perplexity a question about something I'm researching, I go and I say, here's the crazy idea. I'm pretty sure this has been beaten to death. But I just need you to confirm that for me. So what I've just done is I've created a prompt that encourages it to find evidence that it has been beaten to death. When it comes back and says I can't find it, now I actually have something that I'm reasonably confident in. But this is work. This literally takes actual effort to do. And let me see if I can find one in, where's Perplexity? It's here somewhere. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Do. Why do I not see it? All right, well, there's Perplexity, okay. Of course, I'll have to load this off the internet. There we go. This is, I think, the one that I was thinking about. I'm back. Searches around work that's been done in DSLs for system prompts. DSL means domain-specific language, and then I gave it a detailed blob of context from a conversation that I was having with, I think that was with Claude. And then I said, I'm sure this has been beaten to death at this point, proven to be useless, and I'm once again floating a bad idea that's obvious. What have I done? I have so biased, and it's ChatGPT underneath. That's what Perplexity is using right now. It is so biased against finding, it's not, oh, find me evidence that this is a brilliant idea. You can't do that. It doesn't work. It's going to say, oh, there's no evidence. It's a brilliant idea. You are the most creative person in the whole world because it's been taught to be a sycophant. So instead, I take the opposite approach, which is, tell me I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. Well, you're wrong because you're not wrong. Great, I win. You're not crazy. This is not obviously beaten to death. While what you're proposing is actually to the left of most existing work, which is mostly about using grammars and DSLs for outputs or for prompt authoring, not as a formal system prompt language with a validator that defines an instruction content boundary. Now, what does that just say? The idea is that I want to take these prompts and I want to decompose them. I want to analyze them and figure out where their points of incoherency are in a structured way. A DSL, domain-specific language, is not going to work for the prompt itself, but it can work for describing what I want to do to evaluate that prompt. A domain-specific language would be, any of you know Java or Python, or those are DSLs. Now they happen to be general purpose languages, but they are still specific to a particular kind of problem. DSLs can be much narrower than a general purpose language. The problem is if you say, I'm going to build a DSL to do arbitrary text interpretation, you're building an LLM. That's not the goal. The purpose of this, the idea behind this, is a sanity check. I do this all the time. I put my ideas into Perplexity and I say, tell me that, because of course I'm wrong. And you know what? Sometimes it comes back and goes, yeah, this has been done. But a lot of times I go back and I say, it'll say, well, and the answers are always different, which is another big clue, is that I'm not getting the same pattern back. Well, in this case, there is some adjacent work, or there's some partially overlapping work, or there's some work that disagrees or doesn't match this, but it doesn't matter, because in the end, what I get is the information I actually need. What's painful for me is this is the way I want to use them. I want to use them as something that can help me think about problems. And I have to do work to scrape off the sickening sweetness they put on top of it to make it a good consumer product. I don't want a consumer product. I want a scientific tool. I want something that I can actually use to explore. The code is a really good example. I think that actually worked out pretty well. It showed you. You can take it on your own code base and just ask that question. The beauty of the question in that particular case is it wasn't biased. It didn't say, tell me how brilliant this code base is. Because then it'll just go through and find all the positives. Notice that it came back with a mix of positive and negatives. That's much more realistic. I mean, unless it was your code base, then of course you know that you probably haven't put anything in it, and therefore, because I assigned repos, right? And we just took people in the class and said, here. And apparently there are people who haven't done anything in their repo at all. Oh, and speaking of which, I think the no feedback from TAs problem is being solved. It will take a little while because I can't ask the TAs to immediately jump on that. But the people who haven't been receiving feedback, you will be receiving some feedback. The rest of you will be receiving feedback on a 3-week cycle instead of a 2-week cycle, because I took one of the TAs out of the rotation because they just weren't doing anything. So actually, I did a wellness check and I haven't heard back. Well, last I checked, we hadn't heard back from the TA, so I don't know if they're okay or not. But it is what it is. So there you go. So this is the way I'm using the tooling. I'm using the tooling to help me think about problems, not to replace my judgment. If you use it as a tool that is supposed to give you some sort of ground truth, you're fooling yourself. It won't do that. It will do it sometimes, but then sometimes you're going to be the lawyer who decides you're going to have ChatGPT write the brief for it and finds out later that the court is not pleased by this because you faked the citations. So this is an interesting thing about the way that courts actually function. The lawyers are supposed to tell the court what the law is, and the judge then interprets the law that is presented to them by the advocates. So if you make shit up, and the judge starts to suspect that maybe you made shit up, the judge will actually go and look up those, well, the judge will have their clerk do it, but probably hands it to ChatGPT and says, go look these up. The judge will go look up the references and find out that they're lies. The same thing is happening in academia. In academia, the biggest problem is that citations to literature are now appearing in the data that are fabricated. They're appearing in papers that are being accepted. It's a supply side chain poisoning attack. Let's see, so Claude never came out. I don't know what's going on here. All right. So, good. That's the kind of feedback. And now, if you are trying to give someone a review and you don't know what to look for, this gives you something to actually look at. So say, I'm going to go look at that. I'm going to see what they did. And in addition, since you're code reviewing this, you can see what they did well. You can say, wow, I've learned something because I can see something that Claude thought was pretty good. So what can I do with that? Sometimes, though, Claude won't do what you want.
I just noticed something. It said I had 41 comments, but I don't have 41 comments.
All 41 commits are unsigned despite the course requirement. That's wrong. So there you go. Isn't that beautiful? This is why I said you have to actually go and check it.
But I don't think you would even know that, because all you did was come to the repository. Like, I don't think that has the sign.
Oh, you just run the git command, right? You can just count it, right?
Okay, yeah.
That's why I said I use this as a starting point. I don't assume that it's right. I use it as a starting point. One thing you can do if you really want to automate things, you end up using triangulation. So you use different AI agents, you use different models to doing this. Are you sure about Agent 4's claim that the commits?
Provide this to another AI then, because output and have it be like, is this?
I've done that.
So I should just keep like.
You can do that, yeah. Or sometimes you just ask them to do it independently, and then you reconcile it at the end because you can see things that diverge. Agent 4's claim that the commits are not signed. The repo, the organization has a rule requiring signing. So there you go. I can now ask Claude the question. You said. This is why what I said was, don't just simply copy paste this. Make sure you go look. Some of it's right, some of it's wrong. And of course, I haven't set up signing on here. Great. Ah, right. I don't have your signature on here. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have the signature set up here. Share Claude code and earn $10 of extra usage. Agent 4 was wrong. The commits are signed with SSH signatures. You can see the GPG signature header right in the raw commit. The reason the agent got confused, this machine doesn't have GPG SSH allowed signers file configured, so Git can't verify the signatures locally. It reports N and no signature, but that's a verification failure, not the absence of a signature. The signatures are present and were accepted by the organization's Git server. The student is signing correctly. It's just this local environment. Good instinct to question that, a nice lesson for the class. Always verify your agent's claims, especially when they conflict with known constraints. The org requires signing, the pre-push hook enforces it, and the raw commit data proves it's happening. The agent saw in and drew the wrong conclusion. So Claude not only did the analysis, it came back and it said, yeah, you're right, and there's probably why. So the agent in that case created a conclusion that was based upon something that went wrong that you didn't see. If you had done that yourself, you would have seen the error. Because I saw the error when Claude ran it. It says, oh, this file hasn't been set up. That's not a realistic thing to expect. I mean, if I was working, well, if it was a GPG key, it'd probably be publicly registered, like on GitHub. So, I was trying to think of what else I could do to show. Why do I not have that? I don't have anything on this laptop. Wow, this is crazy. My own code, and I don't even have it here. Mostly because I use the laptop to come here and teach. I guess I need to do more, put more. Okay, this is the one this one I will grab. Copy it. Let me see if I can actually get it to, I don't have that set up here. There we go. Good. That's better. So now I can actually come back over here. So this is a more substantive project that I've been working on. And one of the things that I really liked about this is, as I was saying, sometimes it's hard to get them to do what you want. So does anybody know what entity recognition is? This is a common problem when you start building more complex applications, and that is the idea that you want to identify you. But what does that mean? I mean, you're not just the information in Canvas. You're not just the information on your ID, on your driver's license, your passport. You have an identity that is much more complicated than that. And it gets even more challenging when we start talking about the things that are yours or the things that you own. So this is my phone. But when you start trying to do things conversationally, we need to know what those things resolve to. So this is called entity resolution. And I wanted an entity resolution for this research project. Let's see if it's here. Yeah, there it is. The Jabberwock spec. That's the one that I wanted. It's so cool. Right, now I can do that locally. That's even better. Open folder. Show local. Oh, this is the Windows version of it. Need the WSL version. Too many virtual machines. Too many different ways of doing things. Hello. Connect to WSL. Oh, it's activating the extensions. I see it down there in the little corner. I'm just not patient. That's the problem. So this is actually a really fun spec, and it is it's public, so you can actually look at it. But this is actually a specification for a named entity resolution library, and it literally uses the Lewis Carroll poem for all of its terminology. Why did I do this? LLMs are pattern matchers. If I give it a classic example of a specification that uses normal terminology, it won't really read the specification. It will just simply skim it and say, yeah, this pretty much matches the pattern. By changing the terminology that I used, the LLMs did review it. I sent it to 3 different LLMs. I came back with very interesting information and useful changes to the spec. Probably one of the most useful was, apparently in traditional NER systems, they drop names that they don't know what to do with. And Kimmy said, why don't you keep it? This is just a name you haven't discovered the connection to yet. And we did that. And I then used it, actually this was this class. I used it to try and figure out a relationship in this particular class, because I have an NER problem here, which is you have a CWL, and that's what GitHub uses. But your CWL is tied to who you are in Canvas, and Canvas doesn't have that CWL. Canvas only has your name, a Canvas number for you, and your student ID number. There might be some other weird number in there too. So you have lots of different numbers that have been assigned to you as the identification in various databases. But when they're disjoint like that, it becomes much more difficult to try and get them to cross over. The department actually has the CS department actually has a private little tool that you go and you run on this lockdown server that then builds a concordance of those things. And so I have that concordance. But I have to go and manually look at this thing back and forth all the time to try and figure out, when you're talking to me on Discord, I don't know who you are. And that's the whole point of Discord, right? Is I can just deal with the instant there, but I don't know who you are, so I don't know what to look for on Canvas. I don't know what to look for in GitHub. But that's kind of the point of this sort of a system. And so we actually used that test case when we were testing the system. Is like we just used a couple of records that related to this data. So the non-set names are deliberate. They prevent pattern matching to known entity resolution frameworks and force structural reasoning. Each name was chosen for resonance with Carroll's canonical definitions. If a builder agent renames them to sensible names, the builder has failed. The names are the names. So it literally said, if you're coding this, don't change the names to names that are comfortable for you. Leave them alone. Now, we're actually having a conversation about whether or not that makes sense to keep those names. But the reason I think this is interesting is when I took this specification and I gave it to different LLMs, I got different insights. So did I ever get Kimmy up? Kimmy. Yeah, Kimmy. Hey, Kimmy, how are you? And, ask a question. You willing to help me with this? Oh. I have to use my Google thing because I don't have a Chinese phone number. Oh, there we go. And now I don't need to do it because it's going to be in my chat history, so. So this is literally, now you can actually see it. This is the conversation I had with Kimmy. Are you up for leading me around on another adventure? I still ask dumb questions. I still fight collapse, blah, blah, blah. And I use these because I find that in general, it causes LLMs to move away from the sycophantic mode that I despise. And you get a nice response back. Where are we going? I'm firmly convinced the spiders are there for the rave because, again, trying to make this as non-work oriented. Otherwise, it will just simply focus on strictly the output, and I won't get the creativity that I want. So we get down here, I have a design spec, and I biased it. I have a design spec to run by you, hallucinated into existence by one of the sketchy AI models, maybe Grok, that's pretty sketchy. Then I drop it into the context window. I won't be able to verify its provenance, whether it actually came from Grok or somewhere else or nowhere at all. I can only engage with what's in front of me. And then I drop sketchy is provenance enough. And then I drop it down, I put the whole thing in there. It has all sorts of goodies in it. It's got interfaces, as you can see. And there you go. Reads through with the particular attention of someone who has just been handed a document that might be a joke, a serious technical spec, or both simultaneously. That's the kind of response I love to get back from my LLMs, because that means that something didn't turn this into the typical kind of, I'm just going to generate the most common answer, because there's no common answer. Precisely because I forced it into a non-familiar space. Instead of pattern matching now, it's actually engaging in a form of reasoning. It still has to pattern match. Don't get me wrong. But this forces it into a behavior pattern that gives me something deeper. I mean, okay, I've read it twice. I'm like, that's probably hyperbole. It probably didn't read it twice, but it signals to me that it engaged with this differently than if I just simply dropped an ordinary spec in there. And I mean, I've dropped regular specs in there, and I still get decent feedback, but this is kind of unusual, which is what's fun, and that's why I'm using this example. What is the spec doing? It's a genuinely clever piece of design by metaphor. The vocabulary isn't whimsy for whimsy's sake. It's forcing structural reasoning by denying you the comfort of familiar terms. If you can't pattern match tov to alias automatically, you have to actually understand what a tov does. Project an entity into a namespace, shape shifts across contexts, nests under sundials, temporal validity, that's actually pedagogically sound. The nonsense is a cognitive wedge. So it's literally telling me that it achieved exactly what I wanted to achieve with this specification. I mean, if you want, I can give you I can share these. I have no problems. There's nothing public here. The data model is sparse by design, entities as gravitational centers, everything else is orbit. That's the right choice for a system where identity outlives any single observation. The temporal bound on aliases and memberships handles the Tony was a student last term, instructor this term problem without destructive updates, which isn't true, but okay. The Bandersnatch province, blah, 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 and it's like, it's a trap for over-engineering instincts. Extra equals forbid on everything. Then Agent 2 removes the guardrails. That's a shibboleth. If Agent 1 argues about step 4, they failed. The to-dos show the Bene Anthropic and their axolotl tank the finger at the end is either a very specific joke or actually giving you your opening message. I suspect that's a reference to me. Well, no, it wasn't about you, but that's fine. I just copied the prompt. It's a real NER system that flips NER around and says the base object is just an anchor and identity is a projection we construct based upon observations. I've taken a normal problem and I have flipped it around and I've said, I want to look at this problem differently. And I want my LLMs to look at it differently. And I get something that's different. And you know what I now have? I have a working system. I have a working NER system that can do projections of names from temporal data that arrived before the identity arose in the system. That's actually pretty cool. That is something that I haven't been able to find in another system. I mean, I'm sure I haven't looked that hard. It probably does exist. And so, it goes on. And what is interesting here is it said, the AI instances are observers, outgraving facts, slithing aliases, but humans need to find things too. Is the query interface Galumfish exposed to both, or is there a human-facing layer that translates fine-tuning stuff into underlying resolution calls? The AI are participants. They not only construct these observations, but they consume them as well. And that, of course, then changes the analysis again. Participants, not tools, not interfaces, co-resident in the same memory space. So one of the things that I have realized, and the reason that I wrote this spec, is that it turns out that one of the problems that large language models have is remembering and finding things. A couple people are using Cloud Code. Have you ever watched his tool usage? I mean, he's brute force searching the file system for everything, constantly, over and over again. And the observation was, wait a minute, the system that we're building, which is about helping humans find stuff without worrying about hierarchical structure, would also be useful for LLMs. And then it's like, okay, but wait a minute, we're working in the same space. I'm working with Claude, Claude's working with me. Could we have one system that helps both of us in different ways, but exploits the underlying relationships in the data itself? And that's where we got to. That's why we're doing this, because it's like, yeah, this is kind of interesting. Suddenly, we have the tools necessary to allow the large language models not just to use RAG databases. Everybody was on RAG 6 months ago, 9 months ago, whatever it was. And then they found out that the problem with RAG is that the larger the database becomes, the more unwieldy it becomes, because it has no discrimination factor. So then people build extra stuff on top of it to filter it out. This provides a natural way of saying, what I'm looking for are the files that are in this repository, or the files that I've been manipulating in the last 24 hours. Or, so you have other ways of cutting through and reducing the overall search space. So here you go. Let's see. Let me flip your question back on you. Are we saying AI are incapable of persistent identities outside the system, or is this merely a limitation of current systems? I was describing current systems. The session-bound, context window-limited, stateless after-turn architecture that I inhabit. But that's an implementation detail, not a metaphysical limit. So I'm going back and forth. I'm having an actual conversation with this thing, and I'm saying, but wait a minute, what about this case? It's taking a step back, and it's saying, okay, well, that does change the analysis. And I'm getting something that's not performative theater. I mean, it probably still has elements of performative theater, and it's trained to do that. And then we have more conversations about monsters and names have a lot of power, it turns out. So I gave it a 4-word answer, and it understood what that represented because the name was chosen to represent something specific. I'm trying to remember what the... One of the things that Kimi came back with was this observation not to throw away these identities that we can't match up. They said, keep it. And it turned out that that was useful. As soon as we started using it, it was like, wow, something we observed that later mapped to someone that we discovered, now all of a sudden we could put it together. This is kind of cool. So, is it buggy? Probably. It's probably going to have all sorts of bugs in that software, but it is in fact a system that is now there. And there you go. It's not huge. It's not tiny. I wrote it with 2 agents. We explicitly decided to be 2 agents. The first agent was supposed to build the whole model, and the second agent was supposed to go and simplify it. And what is funny is that the second model actually did simplify it. I had Claude reported that it cut the size of the code by like 30%, and it reduced the number of interfaces by half, and it did a number of things that were different vectors. So I used the AI in an overlapping fashion. The first one to generate live coding, and the second one then to go in and now clean it up. Does that mean it's perfect code? But you know what? I didn't have to write it. And if I had to write this code, my code would actually be really solid. I've got decades of doing this. I know how to write really good code, but it would be probably a week of work. Certainly a couple of days. What do the models look like? Something that I do a lot of, which is that when you add data to this particular system, it's frozen. We actually designed the database interface so that you cannot update or delete entries. You only insert them. And that's a particular sort of discipline. That's not necessarily the case of what you would use for any system you built, but it is a pattern that you can actually introduce, and it can be very powerful. Why would you want to have a system where you never deleted the data? What does that do? Yeah. It's like signing your code. You can't go and remove the stuff in the middle because it's a chain. It creates a kind of audit trail. And if you just simply tell the LLMs to do that in an instruction file, they'll forget it. They've already got 7,500 tokens worth of instructions. You shove another 3,000 tokens worth of instructions in there, and now you've got 50 pages of rules to follow. I can barely follow a list of 3 items. I don't know about you. 50 pages of these kinds of detailed, nuanced rules that disagree with each other. Always use the to-do task rule. No, to-do write. So it's writing to the to-do file, or the to-do list. Always use the to-do write tool. Never use the to-do write tool. I'm not making that one up. That one is actually in the Claude Code, the current Claude Code system prompt. And you're like, really? So it turns out the Claude Code is actually distributed as NPM packages. And because it is in fact a JavaScript program, JavaScript or TypeScript, I don't know which one, it is distributed through NPM. It's actually they have the whole thing. You can just automatically extract the text pieces. So you can literally extract what the system prompt is, and people do that. For Codex, which is ChatGPT, and for Gemini's CLI, you can do the same thing because they're open source repositories. So that's what we just did. We just pulled all of those. We're looking at those now to see what the evolution of those prompts are. I'm doing all of this with AI. I'm doing this all with LLMs. I am doing this with Claude, with Codex, not so much with Gemini right now, but and I will revisit and change it around because I will pick whatever tool is working best for me at the particular time. Claude's been really good. In terms of working with Claude, I find that I have to beat it less to behave like somebody who's working with me rather than somebody who's sitting there trying to tell me how pretty I am. I don't need to be told that I'm pretty because I don't believe it. What I need is something that will actually disagree with me and tell me when I'm wrong. I mean, if you want somebody who'll just simply suck up to you and say, oh yeah, you're just brilliant, get a dog. At least they're cute. They'll cuddle with you. And they'll just look at you and you'll just know that you are not as worthy as they think you are. Now, I have talked to a lot of you. I have no idea if any of it is useful. I want to help you learn how to do the code reviews, learn how to understand it, and I went in a different direction than I had anticipated here, partially because, of course, the last thing I got was a piece of feedback that said, well, you know, there's not enough AI stuff going on here. So one person said, there's not enough AI stuff going, boom, I'm like an LLM, ooh, I can fix that. But I also think this is useful in a way that I went beyond what I have done before, which is I actually showed you what I'm doing. I have crazy stuff that I do in here. I wish I could get the Claude instance up. I don't know why it won't come up. It's sort of annoying me. Where is Task Manager? I'll kill it. I don't see it here. For some reason, it's not running. Let's see. Task Manager. I tried to suspend my system and it didn't actually suspend. And we're at time anyway, so it really won't make much difference. But of all the things that I have done with Claude, this is the one conversation that has absolutely made me laugh the most. So maybe that will work. I only have one pinned conversation. And you'll look at it and you'll go, really? This is just weird, because it is really weird. What are you doing? Why won't you open? Are you open? No, it's just not opening. I don't know what's going on. All right, well, too bad. Any questions? Because I've just recorded the weirdest. Oh, and the people who are watching are only actually getting to see the slide from the slide deck. That's even the best. Great. Well, here we go. I'll just finish up and do that then. There is something in here that's useful. Right, so next week we're going to be talking about serverless, and there is a video. It's already in the week 8 module, which I've already released. It's already there. I'm going to talk about things like what lambdas are and so on and so forth. So if you get a chance to do those CCT reviews and peer feedback and whatnot, you've got a brand new tool for using that if you're using AI. If you're not, that's fine. Just go through and look. And I'll be around to answer questions. I try to answer questions 24/7 on Discord. Sometimes I fail. And right now, this t-shirt I picked today specifically because my game at 3 o'clock today did a major release for early access. So it means you can't really actually do anything, but the content is now available. So I gotta get home so I can spend the weekend not working, which isn't gonna happen, but I'll work a little bit less with Claude. So enjoy your Friday and then your weekend and your Monday, and then I'll see you on Tuesday.
For the peer feedback, it said, but